Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 59th episode of Kayfabe with Keaton. And what a guest we have coming in here. He's none other than the voice of OTT wrestling, one of the top interviewers in OTT and play-by-play commentator. This is none other than Aonghus of McAnally. So, but without further ado, let's bring in Aonghus.
How are we doing, my friend?
Thanks so much for coming on today. It's an honor having you on.
Delighted to be here.
And it took us a while, to get the sorted out and stuff, but I'm so happy to finally get you on.
Delighted to be here. Yeah, that's grand. It's been a long time in the works. Great to finally have the chat.
So, I'm just going to get straight into it here. So, how did you first fall in love with wrestling? What's your very first memory of wrestling?
You see, I'm a very old man, so I go back a long way. I go back to the World of Sport days in the 80s, watching stuff here on ITV on Saturday afternoons. The Big Daddies, the Giant Haystacks, right the way back to then when I was a kid. And then I remember Sky TV coming to Ireland for the first time. And that was kind of the first time we were starting to get to see the Macho Man Randy Savages, the Hulk Hogans. But for me, I was more Mr. Perfect, DiBiase, Taker. I kind of like heels more, huge Jake the Snake fan. And that was when I really kind of got captured with it as a young kid, 10 or 11. And then the weird thing for me is I kind of drifted away from wrestling for an awful long time, and only kind of came back when I was in college in drama school. My brother gave me the Rock's autobiography, and I was reading that. I was going, wait a second, he's third generation in his business. I'm third generation in my business. Maybe I've got a lot in common with the Rock. I don't have a lot in common with the Rock, but it kind of re-sparked an interest around that time that the Rock and Stone Cold were quite hot. And and the rest, as they say, is history. But I do go back that far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you started watching in a good era, obviously. Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff. I remember even kind of being on holiday in like Butlin's holiday camps in the UK when I was a kid, and those traveling camp shows that so many people Brian Danielson and Cole Cabana and stuff would cut their teeth in over the years. I remember those shows, and being up there seeing real wrestlers in real life, and that was kind of amazing. And then I would have gone to an awful lot of the shows, the WWE shows here in Dublin when they would come. I remember it was the first time they'd come to run the house show in what was then the Point and is now the 3 Arena. And I went with my mad auntie, and my mad auntie said, "I know what we'll do. We'll bring you to the hotel the wrestlers are staying in." Because she just presumed she would know which hotel the wrestlers were staying in, and she did. But this is in the days before mobile phones, so we didn't get home till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. My parents thought we'd been kidnapped or abducted by aliens or something. And my memories of that going back to the hotel, we got a couple of autographs. I got to chat with Paul Bearer, got to chat with the Bushwhackers. My kid brother, who was 5 at the time, went up to Taker to try and get an autograph. Like, "Excuse me, Mr. Undertaker, can I have your autograph?" And all 6'10" of them stares and just goes, "Get out of my way." But the best thing is, and I resented that for years. I thought, oh man, that's really not cool. You got a 5-year-old kid there looking for an autograph. The least you could do is sign the autograph. But you don't want the Undertaker to sign your autograph. You want to be terrified by the Undertaker. It's a much better story to go, this enormous monster of a man told me to shag off rather than actually get the autograph. But one brilliant thing from that night, and I only discovered this a couple of years ago, I went back and I found the piece of paper that I have the autographs on from that night. And there's an autograph there from terrific Terry Taylor, who was the Red Rooster and whatever else, which is fine, except at the time, Terry Taylor was a tag team champ in WCW and was definitely not on that show. So clearly one of the boys was ribbing a 10-year-old me by signing it as Terry Taylor.
Yeah, he wasn't even in the 10.
Glorious.
Yeah. And with you, when you said you started watching the old British wrestling, who do you think? If something about British wrestling was everything made sense. Like if you look at Jackie Paulo and Mick McManus and stuff like that. I know WWE is awesome. I started watching it, with WWE, but now that I've grown to watch wrestling more, you realize like the technical wrestling, that kind of stuff actually makes sense, and everything that they do makes sense. So at the time, who do you think your favorite British wrestlers were?
That's interesting. At the time, I think probably I was so young that the sparkle of kind of Big Daddy and him just being pushed as this, monster baby face. I think I probably got caught up in that. I do have memories of Kendo Nagasaki as well. And then obviously Giant Haystacks. I mean, again, they were these huge characters. And that's kind of what stands out to me, because at that time I would have been maybe only 5 or 6. So it's those kind of memories of these big, huge guys is what stands out from that kind of time. But yeah, as you say, the style of it, the kind of English rounds matches and all that kind of catch as catch can. Yeah, I think that did appeal to me. And it's one of the things, when I'm in commentary for OTT, one of the things I really try and do is call it as straight as I can, call it as much of a shoot fight as I can. So I have a little bit of a shoot fight background. And so I try, in as much as is humanly possible, I try and call it as a shoot fight. And I think there's a real value in that. I think that's also the joy of having a play-by-play and a color commentator, that I can keep it kind of straight down the middle, and then let the color guy come in and drop all the kind of little quips and wisecracks and all that stuff.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and with that kind of commentary style, would you say you get a lot of that from World of Sport? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of influences, yeah, there's that. It goes back as far as that. A big one for me. So I was a big Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan fan.
Same.
I love that combo. I think Heenan's, this is kind of a mad thing to say, I think Heenan's probably the most underrated worker in the history of the business. And I think many people, if you said to them, okay, you're building a promotion from the ground up, who would be your number one draft pick? And you might say a John Cena or an Undertaker or a Hulk Hogan. I genuinely think having Heenan as your number one pick, just because he's such a utility player, because he can manage, he can commentate, he can bump, and have that brain backstage in terms of booking or whatever else. I think there's very few people can touch Bobby Heenan. But yeah, so that Gorilla Monsoon style would have influenced me quite a lot. And then obviously Jim Ross, as again, that idea of calling it as a shoot fight, calling it as an athletic contest even, I think is really important. I try to have as much respect for the audience as possible, try not to insult their intelligence, and try and call it as I see it. Because I think the product is better for it. I think the audience deserves it, and I think it's worked for me so far. It's like my only function is to help get the boys over. It's to help them tell the story that they're telling in the ring, and you get those guys and girls in there bumping their asses off. As Jim Ross says, they make the music and we write the lyrics, and I think that's a nice way of working at nice way of looking at how we work together to tell that story.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. It's kind of like a shoot fight. We've got a question here. I'm just going to bring this one in first because it matches what we're talking about. Wrestling Insider said, do you have all the Sky channels in Ireland? Do you see a difference in World of Sport wrestling and the American wrestling?
So did we have? It was a while before we got Sky. I think I was 9 or 10 before Sky came in here. So it was a while before we were exposed to that. And then of course Channel 4 used to have pay-per-views and stuff. But did I see a difference in the World of Sports style? Yeah, of course there was a difference in style. The World of Sports style was still very much kind of dingy bingo hall territory, whereas the glitz and glamour of the American thing was very much established by then. Like, you're talking about it's a couple of years, maybe 5 years post the first WrestleMania. So Vince is really, he's kind of perfected what that late 80s, early 90s style of WWE was going to be. And for a young kid tuning in at that stage, I talked about the larger than life character of a Big Daddy or a Giant Haystacks. Suddenly it's bigger again, it's shinier again, glossier again. You think about those costumes Macho Man's wearing down to the ring, things like that. It was a bigger spectacle, certainly. Yeah, that's something I remember.
Yeah, like any kid, if they have the option, maybe they didn't at the time, but if they had the option for World of Sport or WrestleMania, maybe not for an adult, but for a kid, they were 100% choose WrestleMania. But because they'll think it's better when really, I'm not saying WWE isn't good, but I'm just saying, like, when you actually look at World of Sport wrestling, you saw a lot more wrestling as real kind of side to it, more technical kind of wrestling. Yeah. But for sure, if you're a kid watching it, you would 100% choose American wrestling over World of Sport. It's kind of like comparing Butland to Disneyland. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think there's a place for all that. I mean, my favorite thing about pro wrestling is when it is a proper 3-ring circus. I want to have high flying flippy luchadors followed by big, massive meaty men slapping the hell out of each other, followed by a comedy match, followed by a crazy triple threat. Give me some tag team action. Give me some women's matches. Give me a mix of everything. I want it to be a variety show. And so, okay, if you don't like the flippy luchadors, you're going to like these guys here. You're going to, so I want it to be a big spectacle. So there's a place for all of it. I think there's a place for the World of Sports style. I think back, matches I've called for Zack Sabre Jr. stuff like that with OTT. I can enjoy those as much as I enjoy Ricochet versus Ospreay, which I also got to call for OTT. I want to taste all the flavors of the rainbow.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And there is a place for it as well. There is so much different sides to wrestling. Some people will like the more realistic side. Some people will like the big guys, the high flyers.
Yeah, it's like you get people who are big, heavy metal fans versus jazz fans. No one style or genre is better than the other. It's like, oh, that's the stuff you like. That's the stuff I like.
Yeah, it's opinions.
Right. There's no right or wrong on it. It's just, these are our personal tastes. Is what we're into.
And then the 1 Minute Wrestler with Jesse Jackhammer comments saying, "Hi, Keaton. Hello to Jess. Make sure to follow his channel as well." So when you mentioned there that you watched the WWE and the British wrestling, was there much Irish shows on at the time when you were growing up?
No, there really wasn't. I often say from when I was a kid, the closest thing to an Irish wrestler was Rowdy Roddy Piper, and he was Scottish, and he wasn't Scottish; he was Canadian. So
they had that kind of character.
That was as close as we got at that time. And so to see the explosion of it now is incredible. No, I don't remember there being any kind of a local scene here at all, which is why it kind of got exciting then as you came to the early 2000s when the talk of schools coming in and then promotions coming up out the side of that. It was like, oh, this is like the opportunity to do something here kind of for the first time, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so then with the Irish wrestling, did you ever look up to Rasputin because he was Irish?
He wasn't on my radar, I have to say. It wasn't really on my radar at the time. For whatever reason, it was never. It felt to me that there wasn't Irish representation there. I think it passed me by.
Yeah, you wouldn't really notice it, I suppose. He didn't really have that kind of character like a lot of the other Irish guys would.
Yeah,
just a madman.
Yeah, exactly.
So after that, after you'd started watching wrestling, at what point did you think to yourself, this is what I want to do? Was it when you first saw it, or?
No, I tell you, so this is where it gets kind of interesting. I drifted away in my teenage years, not from any kind of falling out of love with wrestling or anything, but just the WWE moved from the free Sky channel to the paid Sky channel, and we just didn't have the paid channels. So the joys of growing up in Ireland in the 80s and 90s when there was no money. So we just didn't have the paid channels. So I kind of just drifted away from it, and it wasn't really on my radar. So I kind of, when I came back to it then, I have a younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, and he was still kind of keeping an eye on things here and there. And so I remember things like after Foley did the Hell in a Cell stuff, that he was kind of on my radar, and that there was talk of like finding the video of him jumping off his house and that kind of stuff. And it was kind of early days of the internet stuff. That would have been going around. So I was kind of starting to get interested in it again. And as I said, it was when I got the Rock's autobiography that I kind of went, oh, this is interesting. Kind of sparked the interest again. And as it happens, that was around the time that there was the first kind of mutterings of a school coming to Ireland. NWA were training in the UK, and that's obviously where Fergal Devitt and Paul Tracy went to train themselves, and it wasn't that long after that they opened up the school in Bray for the first time, and I was the first man through the doors. Again, I was coming to the end of my time in drama school. I was training to be an actor, which is kind of it's my day job. It's my first love, if you like. And I was coming to the end of my third year, about to graduate, when the school opened, and I went out to train with them there for a couple of months. Really loved it. Had a great time. Met some incredible people. I would have crossed paths with Becky Lynch at the time. I didn't realise it. And then it came to just work started taking off for me. I was starting to get an awful lot of work acting wise, both in film and TV and on stage. So I kind of couldn't risk injury and wasn't around for training. So I said, look, it's time for me to kind of move on. And Fergal said, yeah, that's no problem. Just jump in the ring there. We'll give you one last match before you go against him. And he bet me up and down that ring for about 20 minutes. I had his handprint on my chest for about 2 weeks afterwards. But I had a great time training there. I mean, I know certainly, as I famously say on commentary every now and then, I had Maxer's first ever training match. Sean Maxer Guinness, his first ever training match was against me, and I beat him. So that's a big W in my win column. But I had a great time there. But again, after that, I kind of drifted away again for a long time. Really enjoyed bumping, but never with the intention of being a pro wrestler. It was always about kind of, I can use this as an added skill set for my career as an actor. So like I've been looking to do quite a lot of physical work over the years, both on stage and on screen. And so I've always done all my own stunts and things like that. And with, there's a movie I did at that time actually with Anne Hathaway called Ella Enchanted. And we had this big fight scene in it. We were rehearsing that fight for a couple of weeks before shooting. And it's kind of just, it felt good to be able to handle myself in that kind of like a worked fight environment. So it was really useful. But again, like that would have finished up, say, 2002 maybe. And I didn't come back to wrestling until 2014.
Right. So you actually stopped training for a while, yeah?
Yeah, I did. I mean, look, when I say those first few months of training, I could kind of put together a basic match by the end of it, but I wasn't any great shakes. And also, again, like just the intention wasn't there to try and become a worker. I wasn't trying to be a wrestler. I was trying to learn an additional skill. So like when we were in drama school, you're doing ballroom dancing, you're doing ballet, you're doing movement, you're doing, voice and speech, all this kind of other stuff. So it's about having a big toolkit of things that you can bring to the table when you're working on stage or on screen. And it seemed to me that this was another discipline that would be a useful skill set for me to have, rather than ever wanting to be a worker, So yeah, I don't know. I guess I trained for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Yeah, I get what you. And training at the time, working with these legends, you probably didn't know they were going to be legends at the time, but working with these legends like Paul Tracy and Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor. Yeah. What was the best thing that they taught you while training?
Teaching me that I could do it, that it didn't terrify me. So don't forget. I mean, as you'll hear anyone say from training those days, there was no crash pads, there was no ring, it was those like inch thick blue foam things you get in a PE hall. So bumping on it was hell. Like it's not a happy place to be. But after you take that first bump and you go, oh, and you don't quit, you go, oh, this is interesting. This is kind of awakening something, because I'm not a tough guy. I don't fight. I'm not a tough guy by any stretch of the imagination. But you learn a lot about yourself when you start bumping like that and taking those shots. And having to dig deep, and so I think that was one of the most important lessons I took from that whole time. Was that actually I'm a bit tougher than I thought I was, and I can do this. That which kind of the confidence that gives you then as you go out into life generally is a great thing.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people say when you take the first bump out the stage, if you can do it or you can't.
Yeah. And there was plenty of people who didn't make it past that first bump, I can tell you.
It's good bragging rights to know that you're able to do that then.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And then after, when you took that first bump, was it never a point where you thought to yourself, maybe I do want to start wrestling, maybe I do want to be a worker?
No, there wasn't. And the reason for that was I had always wanted to be an actor from no. As I said, my whole family are in theatre and TV. My granddad was Ray McAnally, the actor who won 3 Best Actor BAFTAs. A lot of people feel was robbed the Oscar. My granny was Ronnie Masters and his wife, who was a member of the Abbey Company. Both my parents are in the business. My uncle's a TV director, who's directed Dave Chappelle comedy specials and all of Ant and Dec's early stuff. My other aunt is a TV director as well. So like everyone was in the business, and it was only one way I was going to go. And I'd started working as an actor at 15. So like I was on film sets with Pierce Brosnan when I was 15. I was touring over to London, doing theatre shows when I was 16, 17, and working away here as well. So the wheels were already in motion on that theatre and film and TV career. That had been my one passion from the time I'd been really small. And it was funny. It's kind of only from reading Rock's autobiography that I realized that what they were doing was much closer to what I did than it was to sport, if you like. It was whilst they're still incredibly gifted athletes, it's much more about the performance end of it than I think the athletic end of it. And that was a big awakening for me, and that's kind of why I went and got involved. And so I kind of felt that it was like a complementary skill set, but it was never a case of maybe I could make a go of this as a wrestler. It wasn't on the agenda. And also by the time I started training, it was only a few short months before I graduated, and I got a lot of work very quickly at a drama school. I got signed by the top agent in the country And as I said, films with Anne Hathaway are coming in within a couple of weeks. I was doing TV shows. I was doing big theatre tours and working at the Abbey Theatre, which is our national theatre. So it was kicking off fairly quickly. So it was a case of I'm gonna stay on this train while it's going.
Yeah, and although wrestling is quite physical, a lot of it is like theater. Like when you look at the characters, it is
Yeah.
very like theater with maybe more bumps and more pain. But that's something that people don't understand. It is more like theater than it is like sport. So do you think that you maybe got a head start, maybe with selling and other things like that when you began training?
Yeah, I really did. It's funny. So I learned a lot from that time. Learned a lot about selling. What's been really interesting to me is since I've been back with OTT, so which is nearly 10 years now, I've probably learned more about theatre in the 10 years with OTT than I did in the 20 years in theatre before that. It's been really remarkable. So obviously I started off as just an actor, but I produce and direct as well, and I'm a much better director now for having worked around pro wrestling because as I'm a director, I'm kind of putting together the picture on stage of what you see. There's a whole lot of subtle stuff that you don't realize as an audience that we're doing an awful lot of storytelling with stage positioning, spatial relationships between characters, all that kind of stuff that you don't really know. You don't notice consciously as an audience member, but subconsciously it's telling you all these stories. Who has the power? Where's the focus? Who's running the show? Who's terrified? And what I've learned from the physical storytelling of pro wrestling and watching how these guys put those matches together, I've learned so much. It's been incredible in terms of that kind of the visual storytelling. It's been invaluable to me. So that's been a real help.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you would expect as well. With also being an actor, would you say that? Would you say maybe when you're maybe being a part of OTT or being a part of wrestling, that acting's helped you a lot with wrestling as well?
Yeah,
More than wrestling's
absolutely.
helped you with
Yeah,
acting.
yeah. So the way this is where it gets confusing, right? So in real life, I'm Aonghus McAnally. When I'm acting, I have to use my stage name, which because my dad is also Aonghus McAnally, and Equity don't allow two people have the same name because that's your brand. So when I'm acting, I'm Aonghus McAnally, but the character I play in OTT is called Aonghus McAnally. So it's Aonghus McAnally as Aonghus McAnally playing a guy called Aonghus McAnally, and I really do see it as that. I don't see it as me. I see it as me playing the character of this guy Aonghus McAnally, who's the play-by-play commentator for OTT. And what it does is, this might sound silly, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I can flick a switch in me that goes, I'm in character now. I'm playing this guy Aonghus McAnally who's the commentator, and so suddenly everything is very, very real to me. I care passionately about the guys and girls in the ring. I care about good guys and bad guys, and it feels I can get completely immersed, kind of in character in the storyline, because I've got the skill set to do that. I know how to kind of trick my body into going, okay, no, this is real, and I find that really useful because what it does is it means that my calls, I'd like to think my calls are always coming from a very organic place. I get smartened up to nothing is the truth of it. Cabray tells me nothing ever. I get smartened up to nothing. And so the reactions are usually quite organic and honest and truthful. And I think people connect to that. I think they can tell that I'm really there. Now, look, occasionally I'll have a steer one way or another. I'll know where we're going with the program, or whatever. And that's when I can use my skill from theatre as a storyteller to go, okay, if I know that the end point is this, I can help send a little curveball early on where you go, there's no way he can win tonight, or he's definitely going to win tonight, and then we pull the switcheroo later on. But I think for the most part, because I have that thing where I can kind of get into character, for want of a better phrase, it means that what you get is a very honest and raw, truthful commentary, and I think that resonates with people.
Yeah, I agree. The kind of realistic style. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I'm a proper commentator, but I have commented on some matches on my YouTube channel because I would do some commentary. Some people do say I'm quite good at it, but when I do commentary, I want it to sound as realistic as possible. To kind of like the psychology behind the match more than what's going on right there, because people can see that he's hitting the clothesline, but if you talk about why he's doing this,
Yeah, and I think that's really important because, yeah, as you say, if all you do is after he throws an Irish whip, you go, "That was an Irish whip. That was a drop kick." It's like, cool, pal. We were there. We saw it. Like we're watching it with you. And see, I think psychology wise, that's it's a really useful tactic and approach. It's something that's been useful for me. So, for example, things like I have a bit of a background in boxing, and have a big interest in MMA. I've never fought MMA or trained MMA, but I would have been a big fan of MMA coming along. So I understand a little bit about grappling and shoot fighting. As I've done a lot of boxing training over the years. There's a one-man show I did with a theatre company called Fight Night, where I play a middleweight boxer. And it's just a one-man show. And basically, the show is an hour-long boxing workout while I'm talking to the audience. And so just to get back in shape for that every time I do it, I think we did a 3-month training camp the first time around. We just finished a run of it. We were in New York. We were off Broadway back in April for a month with what was the last hurrah, because I put it to bed now and that's it done. But like that, it was another 4 or 5 month training camp to get into it. So I've done a lot of boxing training. And so what I try and do when I'm on the commentary call is you'll hear me talk about ring positioning, about footwork, about things like that, and you who's taking the center of the ring. And I think the best example of that was around the Walter Devlin feud in OTT, which was just a phenomenal time for us, arguably the pinnacle of what OTT ever did. And it became this weird thing where it was all cross-pollinating, where I had mentioned a line in a sit-down interview with Jordan about Frank Bruno and Mike Tyson, where Bruno, who was a world-class heavyweight fighter, he says the first time Tyson hit him, it was a kind of power that he had never experienced at any point in his life before that, sparring or fighting or anything. No one had hit him as hard as Tyson. And I asked Devlin if he felt something similar the first time he locked up with Walter. And Devlin said, yeah, the first time he chopped me, I thought my heart stopped.
Yeah, I've seen his chops.
Yeah. And so whatever happened, Sean Ryan, who was doing our video package at the time, who has, of course, since been headhunted by WWE, he's their main guy there now. Sean jumped on that as a thread, as a story thread about this Tyson Bruno thing, and started introducing B-roll into the promos of Tyson and Bruno. And then it became more about boxing. And then Devlin literally changed up his training regime to include more striking. And so my commentary then was able to draw on my background in boxing to talk about the way he was now throwing hands. And it ultimately came to the point where Devlin changed his move set to have this killer 4-punch combo that we talk about. And none of us is really sure where any of it came from, because it wasn't Walter's idea, it wasn't Devlin's idea, it wasn't my idea, it wasn't Sean Ryan's idea. It was just all of us working together. And, I offer this thought. You go, great, I'll take that and add this. Oh, great, I'll take that and add this. And it went round and round and round. And it built into this incredible emotional night in the stadium where we'd all put our little ingredients in the pot of this wrestling stew, if you like. That's not the worst metaphor of all time. But we'd all sprinkle our little ingredients in. And it was incredible. So, yeah, that's where I think, as you say, trying to get the psychology and trying to get some of that shoot fight element in, talking a bit about why that, getting the torque through the hips for those outside leg kicks is what's going to chop down a bigger guy, as opposed to just going, oh, he's throwing kicks and for the sake of it. Knowing a bit about that, I like to kind of go, I talk about styles make fights, and I go, tactically, how do we go about this fight here? If you are the smaller guy in Jordan Devlin, JD McDonough, how do you chop down the giant oak tree that is Walter? And how do you go about it? Or even the matches we have at the moment, if someone's fighting Big Damo, how are you going to beat the guy? You can't lift him. You can't throw him. Like, he's seemingly impervious to strikes. Why do you need to beat him? So that we talk about that kind of stuff. And I think that's a style that works for me. It's a style I like when I'm watching my wrestling.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. But when you also talked about making the movie Fight Night, and you talked about the ring positioning, that's a big thing in wrestling, especially when you're doing training. They always talk about the ring positioning. So would you say, with you training in wrestling, and would you say that Fight Night was quite a lot like... Would you say that a lot of it was quite like wrestling? Yeah, quite a lot like training?
Yeah, well, the secret I'll let you in on is when I initially pitched Fight Night, it didn't specify. I said I want to do about a sportsman, but I didn't specify which sport, because I wanted it to be about pro wrestling. I wanted to play a pro wrestler. And when I went in to pitch it, Gavin Kostick, who's a collaborator of mine, he wrote it for me. His dad was a fighter. His dad was a boxer. And he goes, yeah, we're going to do this boxer. And the one sport I had refused to do was boxing. Because I knew I couldn't fake it. And he goes, yeah, we'll do it as a boxer, right? Yeah, because there's lots of sports we could look at. I mean, I was playing a lot of GAA at the time. So you're going, okay, GAA, we can move that across to soccer or rugby or there's a lot of sports here we can kind of cover with, the way my body works, whatever else. But I'd never trained boxing in my life. I knew I'd never trained boxing in my life, and I knew I couldn't fake it. It's like, no, not boxing, not boxing. He goes, yeah, we're doing boxing. I was like, anything but boxing. Goes, we're going boxing. I was like, right, okay. And so again, getting in and doing that training was tough to begin with, but I learned an awful lot. But yeah, it is a huge benefit having that kind of shoot fight background and also having the pro wrestling background as well. Simple things like, it's not even just simple as knowing the names of moves. Anyone can learn the names of moves, but it's having been through them, having given them and received them, that you know what they are. That sometimes there's stuff that kind of looks deceptively, kind of doesn't look all that spectacular because it's not a destroyer from the top through a burning table or whatever. But there's other moves that really knock the wind out of you, really hurt. And sometimes I think a real simple thing is body shots. People know that a punch to the head and a knockout punch, whatever, reads as a big finish. Unless you've sparred, unless you've trained, you've no idea how debilitating those body shots can be. And so while they don't look fancy, they hurt. They really, like, think of it as a video game character. Your health bar is sliding right the way down from those body shots. And so for me as a commentator, to be able to get that across to people, because, not everyone has sparred, not everyone does have a fight training, to let the audience know just how rough those moments can be for a fighter. I think that helps bring a touch of the realism to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you talk about that, I've seen that you've been able to, with you training in wrestling, and you've seen what's happened and how these moves feel. That's a really, really good thing for a commentator. Like Wade Barrett, has been in the ring a lot. What's his name? Bobby Heenan's been in the ring. Gorilla Monsoon. All these people have had the experience of wrestling. So yes, you could mention and you could know these moves like hip toss or whatever. To feel them is a different idea, and then to commentate on them makes it sound 1,000 times better.
Yeah, I think so. It's that thing of when wrestlers call out fans on the internet going, oh, unless you've bumped, you can't comment on what's good or bad. Or unless you've worked a match, you can't. Again, you're allowed to have your personal taste. That's all fine. But I do think it makes a difference to really know what it is to take those bumps. I do think I think being inside the business, that having an insider knowledge is a separate thing. It's a different thing. It's another level. And I think that's all any of us are hoping for. Like, you want to have as many layers, as many levels to it as possible so that you're giving the fans the best experience they can possibly get. Again, the only thing I ever care about is the experience for the fans. That's all I care. I don't care about getting my stuff in. I don't care about getting myself over. I mean, Jesus, I'm at this nearly 10 years now. I think people can see there's never been a moment where I've been go, oh, watch me be really clever. Watch me try and say this cool thing. Watch me try and get my catchphrase in. Like, I'm always, my only focus ever is to help get the talent over, help tell the story. That's the only thing that matters to me. I don't care about me. And I think if I was trying to make me the star of the show, it would fall apart because that's not how the show is structured. The dude with the microphone in his hand is not the star. The guy or the girl standing up on the turnbuckle holding the belt above their head, they're the star. And unless your ethos and desire is to help push that and not push yourself, you'll never go anywhere as a commentator. People smell it from you a mile away. And it's not what you're there for. It's not your job. In the same way as, an enhancement talent, your job in a squash match is to take two moves in the finisher. And if you do that well, brilliant, well done. Brooklyn Brawler made a 35-year career out of it. And there's no shame in that. That's a noble, honourable thing to do. The Fink or Mean Gene weren't there to try and look like tough guys. I'm not there to try and get myself over. All I care about is getting the talent over. That's the only focus. Because if I do that, then the fans get their money's worth. The fans get the experience that they deserve and they've paid for. It's the only thing I care about, ever, ever, ever. Both in theatre, in film, and particularly in pro wrestling. I just care about giving the fans the night they deserve.
Yeah, and when you mentioned there, giving them what they deserve and stuff, that's something the commentator, really. It takes a lot of years for a commentator to realize that. So obviously you're very well experienced in commentary. So at what point made you want to take down the boots and pick up a microphone?
Yeah, this is the mad thing. It had never occurred to me to be a commentator. It never crossed my mind. And so what happened was, so OTT starts off at the end of 2014. I missed the first two shows, but I got to the third show, which was the first Scrapper Mania. Dave Mastiff came over from the UK he was fresh off British boot camp for was TNA, I guess. And my kid brother, who's now no longer a kid, says, come on, we'll go to this show. And I said, no, I'm not interested. I've seen the posters, I've seen the ads. They're really pushing that it's over 18. That's going to be hardcore and blading and cheese graters and light tubes. I've no interest in that. I don't want to go. And he went, come on, it's only a tenner and it's close enough to where we live. I was going, nah, I'm just not really pushed. And in the end, he talked me into it. And I instantly fell in love with it that very first night. It was the old days of the famous Tivoli Theatre, which was the dingiest, grungiest underground, like a concrete bunker that with a ceiling that was quite low, but just high enough to let a 6-foot guy get on the top rope and do a flip. But it kept all the sound and the atmosphere and the energy packed into this tight room, and it was phenomenal. It was a movement. It was lightning in a bottle. It was Cabaret had captured something, and I went up to him that night. And I said, "Look, because I've as I said, I've my own theatre company." I went up and said, I said, first of all, I said, where can I, who's running this? Who owns the show, and where can I find them? And so I found him after the show, and what I think I said was, listen, this was an incredible night. I have my own theatre company. We need to co-promote or co-produce or do something. Now, what I will say is, in those days, they had a special at the bar of 3 cans of cider for a tenner. And I think I might have been 6 cans of cider deep at this stage. So what actually came out was like, I love wrestling. You're brilliant. This was a great show. So Cabaret took one look at me and said, yeah, sure, find us on Facebook, kid, and walked off. Now, needless to say, I did go and find him on Facebook. I made contact because it was only a couple of weeks later that I went back and started training in the school, and also that I hired Joe to come in. I was producing a show for the Dublin Theatre Festival that year, again, where basically the opening hour of the show was a fight scene between me and another actor. And I went, the one thing because I have the background in wrestling at this stage, the one thing I hate more than anything is bad stage combat, because a lot of actors, that's fine, they're actors, they have no fight background at all, and so they're throwing punches that don't look like punches. It's all missing by 2 feet for safety reasons. I went, that's not what I'm interested in doing. We're doing it in a small 100-seat theatre in the middle of Dublin city centre. The audience were almost literally within touching distance. And so if I'm going to do a fight there, it needs to be real. It needs to feel like a shoot. And so we brought Cabaret in, and the brief that I gave him was, I want to use the tools of pro wrestling to make what's effectively a worked shoot fight here. With as much physical contact as possible. I don't want to be pulling punches. I don't want to be using stage combat techniques where you swipe across the face into the audience. It reads like you've made contact. So I want to go real contact. And so we found ways for safe contact in that regard. Safer contact, shall we say. And Joe did an incredible job, understood the brief perfectly.
Seems like we've lost Aonghus here.
Oh, I'm back. Still there?
Oh. Yeah, you're.
I don't know what happened there. So I think we got to first say that Joe understood the brief perfectly, put together this incredible fight scene, and we did the show that year, and the press reviews were off the charts. I mean, all the Sunday papers going, this feels like a UFC fight. It feels like these two fellas are knocking the Jesus out of each other. And there was some nights, I remember the guy Ian Toner, wonderful actor, who was playing my brother in it. And there was one thing I landed a big body shot, and you just pull the shot, so there's contact, but it's safe. And there was one night I carried through just like an extra inch. I just knocked the wind out of him. I just locked eyes with him. I was like, I just like silently with your eyes kind of going, I'm so sorry, pal. You're welcome to send that receipt whenever you need. But it was brilliant. It was really great. And so that was it working with Joe. So that's a long roundabout way of saying I was already working with OTT working with Joe, shall we say, and training with OTT, because I did a lot of wrestling training to get back ready for that show, when they launched the video on demand, and they launched it without commentary. And I instantly just went, it's not good enough. We can't let that go out. So spoke to a few of the boys backstage, and essentially the advice I got was, don't ask for permission. Just do it. So myself and the legendary Don Marnell, we were mates who were sitting in the front row every show anyway. Don has a background in stand-up and in radio. Obviously, I have the background in theatre and film, but also I do an awful lot of voiceover work. I do kind of all radio commercials and TV commercials for also kind of cartoons, animation, a lot of voice work. So you got 2 guys with good voices who know how to perform. He's got the stand-up comedy for the wisecracks as colour. I've got the shoot fight background for play-by-play. And we both are intimately knowledgeable of the product because we're in the front row every show. So what we did was we ripped two matches from the video on demand. I think it was a Pete Dunne Luther Ward title change and a session comedy match, basically, to show that we could do the two ends of OTT. And we went to Don's apartment with my recording gear, and we just recorded the commentary on it. And we brought it to Joe and said, look, here's the deal. No expectations, no obligations on anything, no pressure. This is what we have to offer. If you want it, let's do it. He took a listen and instantly went, yeah, good, we're good to go. Let's do this. And so I think then it was the Invasion Super Show, which is, what is that, August 2016 maybe, is our first show. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've been there ever since.
And you never stopped, which is awesome. So
yeah.
So when you started training, well, after you started training with OTT for a while to get in shape for that show, after when you were doing commentary, what point did Joe Cabray and you think that you were ready to be a commentator? Did you think from the very start that you could do this, or did you realize?
Yeah, no, I knew I could, and he thought from day one too. As soon as he heard us, there was something magic. Again, this is one of those things. Michael Caine, the movie actor, has a famous line in his autobiography, which says, at the start of the 60s, none of my friends were famous. By the end of the 60s, all of my friends were famous, and I hadn't changed my friends. And there was something magical about that time in OTT where just the chemistry between me and Don was perfect, and we kind of hit the deck running from day one. With no experience in commentary, either of us, we just found we could naturally do it, and we particularly worked really well together. And it's that thing that also at the time you had Jordan Devlin on the roster, you had the Session Mott on the roster, you had the likes of Maxer, who was like at that stage probably 15 years deep in the business, and done all that Japanese work as well. Cabray is there as Luther Ward, ex-WWE himself. Paul Tracy's there as this, the big heel who'd been around so much. But also then you had the independent talent of the Pete Dunnes, the Ryan Smiles, the Zack Sabre Juniors, the Will Ospreys, the Ricochets. And so just it was a magical, magical time. And so we did know from day one, but myself and Don knew that we could work together really well. And it sounded like the kind of commentary we would like on the wrestling we watched. And I think Cabray knew from day one as well, because he pulled the trigger on it so quickly and never looked back. So, yeah, I think we were lucky that we got there from the very start.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe if you didn't do that at that time, and you didn't ask for, if you did ask for permission, things maybe would have been different. So thankfully you didn't ask for permission at the time. That would be something someone would say not to do, but it seems like you've done it and it worked out well.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's nature to, the nature of Joe Cabray. He really is a one-man band. He keeps that show pretty much ticking over by himself. It's an enormous undertaking. Now, again, it's nothing new to him. You think of the old AWR shows he used to do, touring around, France and Romania and 5,000 seaters and all this kind of stuff. So he knows how to carry a show that size on his shoulders and carry a promotion on his shoulders. But it's a lot to juggle, and to try and pitch him stuff on show day, it's futile. It's not a great idea. He has so many plates spinning, with international acts flying in, organising workers here, last minute booking decisions, dealing with technical issues in the venue, all that stuff. So yeah, better to, as they say, better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And also the thing with it was, we weren't looking for a favor from him. We were offering him a solution to a problem he didn't even know he had, basically. And so that, I think that's always, particularly in the pro wrestling business, if you're coming to people all the time asking for favors, that can be a bit of a drain. If you're coming going, I'll solve a problem for you, here's something I can do. And I think in particular, if there's people tuning in who are looking to break into the business, who maybe don't necessarily want to be a 6'4", 250-pound heavyweight, there are many, many ways into the business. If you can edit video packages, you have a skill set that we really, really need. If you can commentate, you have a skill set we really need. If you can referee and referee well, you have an invaluable skill set that any promotion would bite your hand off for. So there are many, many ways into the business. And I think an awful lot of people, a bit of self-awareness is a useful thing. Not everybody can be a pro wrestler. It's not for everybody. It's a tough, brutal, challenging job that very, very, very few people on the planet can make a living out of. So be honest with yourself. You know, if you want to break into the wrestling business, if it's your passion, cool. Maybe being a wrestler isn't for you. It's not for me. And I've bumped as much as I've bumped. I've worked a couple of Rumble matches over the last little while, but I'm not a worker. I know where my niche is. I know what I can do, and I think I really contribute to making the product, be as strong as it is. I think I have my part to play, and I think that's the thing for other people as well. That there can be a part to play for you there. Go and if you want to get involved, get involved. Approach promotions. Again, not looking for a favor, looking to help them out and solve problems for them.
Yep. And I think that's maybe what OTT was missing at the time. And you probably thought that yourself, that a commentary, because the shows obviously were incredible with the Tivoli Theatre, give you kind of ECW vibes. Yeah, would you say it was kind of like the ECW days when you were going to them shows?
Yeah, it's a funny thing because it was underground and hipster and alternative and whatever else, and there was a real sense of being part of something special. I say it all the time that the fans are what makes OTT what it is, and that's not blowing smoke. That's not hyperbole. That's a real thing. It is the response of the fans that makes OTT as special as it is. Now, obviously, Cabaret does a great job of looking after people, but I remember when we brought Chris Hero in. Chris came over, had a great time, was well looked after. And Joe really is great for looking after people. They're in top of the range hotels. They're driven back and forth everywhere. They're well looked after. They're picked up from the airport, dropped off. There's catering backstage now and everything. So it's a really excellent place to come and work if you're an international indie guy. And Chris Hero went back and he was evangelical in every locker room. He went back to saying, you really need to get onto this OTT thing in Ireland. And that really opened doors for us. Obviously, Joe had his connections from his time in the States anyway. And he had people he could call on. But organically, the word getting back from the lads, whether that was around the UK from the likes of the Pete Dunnes and the Ryan Smiles, or whether it was in the States, I know Chris Hero in particular was really key in that. It's kind of spreading that good news. And it meant that the people came, and we were able to get these huge stars. Like that period of, say, 2017, 18, 19, when the international indie scene was so hot, and we were able to get everybody. I mean, like if you think the who's who of people we had come through during that time, the Kenny Omegas, the Young Bucks, Cody, Jushin Thunder Liger, anyone you like. Like we had the Zack Sabre Juniors. We had Ospreay versus Ricochet. Not long after they broke the internet. Incredible. But I tell you, here's a really interesting thing about Cabaret, who is an excellent businessman, but also he cares about the audience too. He knows the fans are the magic, right? So that the famous Father Ted show that we ran in the Tivoli did gangbusters business. I think we might have broke 700 that night. And rather than go, excellent, we're going to be rich forever, this is fantastic, OTT is just going to grow and grow and grow, Joe capped every subsequent Tivoli show, I think at 550. So he was leaving, I think at the time what tickets were 10 or 15 quid, he was leaving at 150, leaving a couple of £1,000 behind every single show, because even though he knew he could get them in, the fans who were going to be at the back wouldn't have a brilliant experience. They'd have a fine experience. They'd still have a good show. They'd have a few drinks with friends. They could see most of the action or bits of the action. And he would rather lose thousands of pounds that was being left behind on each show to make sure that the fans got the brilliant experience. Because awesome. that kind of loyalty to the fans buys the loyalty to OTT from the fans. And they go, no, we know we're not being taken for a ride. We know we're being looked after. This man is literally leaving thousands of pounds on the table every single show because he cares about us. And as I always say, if someone offers you advice that costs them money, you should probably listen to it, and that's why I have so much respect for that man. I really do. He's been incredible throughout the kind of the decade that I've spent with him. But he cares passionately about it, and he cares about the fans.
Yeah, and that's the main thing you need for a promoter, and working with Joe Cabaret. What's been your favorite part of working with Joe Cabaret?
The fact that he hasn't killed me yet. He can be an angry man. He's mellowed a lot. He's mellowed a lot over the last few years. Those early days in the Tivoli, the height of the madness in the Tivoli, a show day could be interesting with Cabaret. He can get quite hot. And again, it's just because he cares so much. But no, I've been very fortunate. We've a good relationship. And again, look, I'm significantly older than most of the people on the roster. which is that's why I'm worried at the moment with this storyline about Dara trying to find out who his dad is, because like in terms of the people on the roster, there's very few people who can biologically be. It's like me and Jamie Coleman, maybe one other. So I gotta watch out to see how that storyline goes. But because I'm closer in age to Joe, I'm a bit older, but closer in age to Joe than a lot of the roster is. He knows that, and because I've been around, he knows that he's kind of got a safe pair of hands in me, so he can trust me with stuff. And also because, again, as I said, I have my own theatre company, so I'm producing shows and running tours around the country as well. So I know a fair bit about the production side of things, that I can be a kind of a sounding board, or not a shoulder to cry on, but I can be there in, when needed. I mean, Jesus, the most recent example, the absolute insanity of a phone call after close of business on a Saturday evening to say your venue for Sunday in Limerick is gone. It's flooded. And the mad scramble there. But Cabray was able to get on to me. And because I have the network of theatres around the country that I have, I was able to ring the tech guy from the theatre in Limerick and say, look, is there any chance we can get access to the theatre? And if not, what are the other options? What could we do? What would you suggest? And that's, the idea that I have that skill set, I bring that kind of thing to the table as well for Joe, means I'm a useful guy to have in his stable. So I'm glad to be able to do that for him. And the other thing, again, as I said, I'm nearly 30 years in show business. I'm 29 years in show business next month, across theatre, TV, film, podcasting, wrestling, whatever you like. So I've been around, and I've worked with Oscar winners, I've worked with Tony Award winners, all that kind of stuff. Nobel Prize winners I've worked with. And so I don't get phased or starstruck really. So he knows that if he needs some of the bigger names looked after, kind of picked up from the airport or whatever else, that I'm a safe pair of hands for doing that. That I won't be going, oh, and then did it hurt when you fell through Hell in a Cell and write your autograph? Like, that's not happening with me. And he knows that's there. So I think I'm a useful guy for Cabray to have around. And I'm just hugely grateful to him, because here's the thing. That 5, 6, 7-year-old who was watching World of Sport was just a massive wrestling fan. The guy who was there getting Paul Bearer's autograph after the WWE house show when he was 10 or 11 was just a massive wrestling fan. I'm still a massive wrestling fan, and I get the best seats in the house for the best wrestling in Europe, month in and month out. So he's given that to me as a gift. I give him back the job that I do, which I think has been beneficial to the company. But I'm just hugely grateful to Cabray, hugely grateful to him, because it's been magic. It's been, like I said, we're coming up on, it's over 9 years now, nearly 10 years, and as a decade of experience, the moments of magic. Right, riding that bus to Belfast with Mick Foley, where a lot of the imports sat up the front of the bus, Foley was straight down the back with the rest of the boys. Driving Scott Hall around and kind of talking to him, picking his brain. At the time, he was training up his son, and at the time, I was making a theatre show with my dad, and I was talking to him about the idea of working, father-son combos and stuff, and what he thought of it. And that's Razor Ramon that you're driving around. Like, those are moments of magic that my experience of being around Cabray has given me. So I'm eternally grateful to him. I'd take a bullet for the guy.
Yep. I'm just going to bring this question in here because it's got something to do with what we're talking about. So, Many Molly says, do you get to meet Bang Imports at OTT behind the scenes? Who was the coolest? Surely Carlito.
I met Carlito only yesterday, and yes, indeed, he was very cool. There's been incredible people, like memorable ones. Foley and Scott Hall count. Honky Tonk Man, just in terms of my vintage, my generation, seeing Honky Tonk was a big thing. Chris Hero was remarkable. So we spent a lot of time with Chris that weekend, because we were doing Dublin and we were doing Galway, and I think maybe Belfast as well. So I did a lot of miles with Chris that weekend. And what was fascinating about him was, as deep into his career as he was at that stage, he was giddy like a schoolgirl. His enthusiasm for pro wrestling is like, he loves pro wrestling more than anybody on the planet, maybe. And he was so like, he tapped me on the arm as I'm drunk. Oh, and you remember this? And what about this? And this is so exciting. Oh, okay, did you guys see this? So excited about everything. A huge one for me was Colt Cabana. So when I started off my theatre company back in 2010, I ripped off his podcast format, like from top to bottom, and made an Irish theatre podcast, which kind of became the #1 arts podcast in the country. But I absolutely ripped off his entire format. And so it was great then to once you get him over and say, hey, listen, thank you. You had a huge impact on my career. And then what was brilliant was for the 100th episode of that podcast, I had Cabana on as my guest to go, look, you're the man who gave birth to all this. None of this would exist without you. Let's get you on as guest number 100. And he was fantastic. He's a lovely guy. Yeah, but it's been brilliant. Like I even remember I got given out to by Ospreay in the dressing room, and rightly so. Someone had made a mistake, and I was angry about it, and I decided to give that person like not a public dressing down, but I started giving out, and I shouldn't have. And Ospreay saw and immediately came over and intervened and shut it down. Said, no, not now. This doesn't need to happen here. Be professional. And it's very rare. As I said, I'm nearly 30 years doing this. It's very rare I've had to have a dressing down like that, but I absolutely deserved it that day. And I'm really grateful that Ospreay had the courage and the sense to come and step in then. So I've learned from a load of different people. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I'll keep learning. I want to keep learning. I don't necessarily want to get a dressing down every so often, but when I deserve it, I hope it's there. I hope there are people who are proper locker room leaders who'll step up and do that. You know, I've seen a couple of people do that over the years where it needs to be done, and it's absolutely the right thing to do. We gotta make sure that we're all trying to do our best for it to be the best every single time, because again, that's what the audience deserves.
100%. That's what they've paid to see as well. Yeah. But when you with working with some of these guys like Will Ospreay and people like that, what's been your most funniest memory or favorite memory?
Favorite memory. It's a lot. It's usually I'm kind of on an airport run or a hotel run after show, so I don't end up in the bar with people too often. We had a good night out with Swoggle. Swoggle was great crack. We had a lovely night out with him. What else has been funny? The tire blew up on the bus from Belfast one day. That was got stranded on the side of the road. That was an experience. And I tell you a funny road trip story. The first time we ran Limerick, this was very early on. I don't even think I was on commentary. I think I was going down as a fan and kind of ring crew. And we had Scotty Davis in the car, and we were chatting about it. I'd been training with Scotty for, I don't know, a couple of months, maybe 6 months at that stage. And he had ragdolled me around the ring, left, right, and center. And it turns out our birthdays are side by side. He's the 3rd of December and the 4th of December. And we were talking, he goes, oh, it's my birthday next week. I was like, oh, it's my birthday next week too. He goes, what? I'm the 3rd. Oh, Jesus, I'm the 4th. I said, but there's probably a few years between us. And at the time, I was sure Scotty was maybe 22, 23. I would have been about 33 maybe. I was older. I was 35. And I said, so what are you? You're 23? He goes, no, I'll be turning 15. I was like, are you telling me you're currently 14? He's like, yeah. I was like, he had been ragdolling my grown man ass around that ring for months at the time. I was like, this is incredible. That's a funny one. That's a funny road story for me. I was like, oh my God, you are unbelievable. That guy's a genetic freak. That he is an incredible fighter.
He's incredible. I've seen a lot of his matches. I like his kind of hardcore striking style. I think that's quite original and unique from Scotty Davis. Another question from TZS videos. Will you be bringing your fight night to a show in Northern Ireland?
We have in the past. We've played the Marketplace in Armagh. We played the Lyric in Belfast. I always try and get across the border anytime I'm on the road with a show because not enough traffic goes across the border in terms of we don't get enough Northern Irish theatre down here and we don't bring enough up. So I always try and do that. I get to the Marketplace in Armagh with most shows, and I get to the Lyric in Belfast. I have officially hung up the gloves on fight night. I'll be 45 at Christmas, and it's and that character's 28, and I've just I just about got away with it in New York back in April. I don't have another run of that in me. And also getting back down to middleweight again. I enjoy wine and cheese. I don't want to cut weight back down to middleweight again anytime soon. I like burgers. I like donuts. I like wine and cheese. And I don't necessarily like, running half marathons a couple of times a week. So I've officially hung up the gloves on fight night. But absolutely, any show from Rise Productions, we will absolutely be crossing the border. It's funny. I've got family and friends in Derry. We've never made it to Derry yet. So that's definitely on the agenda for getting up next. So we've hit Armagh, we get to Belfast pretty much every time. And then we get up around the border as well, that we'll do kind of a few of the border counties this side of the border as well. So there'll always be an opportunity to come see a Rise Productions show, don't worry.
And Baga asks, wrestling across Ireland has boomed since COVID. What brought this big interest in wrestling recently?
I tell you, I think part of it is that we saw what it's like to have live entertainment taken away from us. You know, there was an awful lot of people who
Hmm.
suddenly couldn't get out of the house, couldn't go and experience that live show. And what's fascinating, you see it now, why the big streamers are starting to put the money behind sport, because it got to the point where everyone has their own kind of on-demand box and the VO, like whatever, that you can pause TV, rewind, you can schedule it to record. So the kind of big appointment television of, going back to the 80s and, who shot JR in Dallas, or, those big kind of water cooler moments as they used to be known of. Oh, did you see what happened in EastEnders last night or Coronation Street last night? That doesn't happen anymore to the live extent, to the same extent. The only place where that still happens is where it has to be live, where you have to be there in the moment to know what happens, and that is sport. And thankfully, we live in the world of sports entertainment, so you know what it's like to try. If you don't stay up for WrestleMania, to try and avoid spoilers the next day until you see it is a nightmare. So
Yeah, it's hard.
the whole thing about being there live is what it's about. And that shared experience with an audience around you, to have that thing where you turn to the stranger beside you who you've never met before, go, oh my God, I can't believe Brock ended the streak, or I can't believe they swapped the title, or whatever, So I think that might be part of why the interest is there now. Like I said, we had it taken away from us for quite a while. And it was rough, man. That was a rough time because, again, as I said, my day job is theatre and film, and that was taken away as well. I had a tour on the road at that time. And we had to cancel those shows. But in terms of the OTT show, we were so close to that Scrappermania. I tell you exactly how close we were. Dan Barry was sitting on the plane on the tarmac. That's how close it got. And mercifully, he managed to get off the plane and get out, because if that, he may well have been able to get the flight over, but he then would have been stuck here and not working at home.
Mm.
So it was really close. But yeah, I do think having that taken away from us has given us an understanding of the importance of live entertainment and the importance of sharing that live experience with other fans around you. And again, that's been one of the beautiful things about OTT. You see this in kind of there's a Facebook group where fans can kind of chat and sell tickets or give advice or kind of opinions and stuff. And every so often you'll see someone say, "Hey, I've never been to OTT before. Belfast is going to be my first show, or Dublin's going to be my first show, Limerick's going to be my first show. Is it okay to turn up on your own, or do you like?" And everyone's like, "Oh my God, come sit with us. You'll have a ball." And that's what happened to me. I walked in on my first night, and Al Byrne is there with his wife Claire, and he goes, grabs me by the scruff and like, "Sit down there. You're in the ward section." I was like, "What's the ward section?" He goes, "When Luther Ward comes out, you cheer. Here's a sign. Now go." I was like, "All right, I'm in the ward section." But it is that huge welcoming thing from the fans. They're going like, if you're coming on your own, if you're a little bit shy, you're not a big extrovert, outgoing kind of person, it is no problem. The OTT fans are the most welcoming fans in the world. We would love to see you at a show, and you'll be welcomed with open arms. They'll say, "Hey, come sit with us. We'll share a beer. We'll clue you in on storylines if you're not clued up on who's fighting who or what the feud is." It's a magical, magical place. And I love to see that, because oftentimes people talk about wrestling fans on the internet and how snipey they can be and how snide they can be and how negative they can be. That's not OTT fans. The OTT fans will welcome you with open arms. If you're a stranger, you're only a stranger because you're a friend we haven't met yet. Get in here, you're with us. Cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys, let your hair down and have a brilliant night. That's magical, you know?
Yeah, and I watched a documentary about OTT before. I think it was actually you that said it about letting your hair down and having a good night, and the character that's exactly like that. I think you said this was like Sasha Moth Martini, although she's a character, she kind of represents that.
Yeah, I mean, what a phenomenal talent. She's incredible. You think about the level of success that she got to, getting over the Ring of Honor stuff and everything, the international success. Like, everyone will say that it was the Luther Ward, Paul Tracy feud in the early days of OTT that really put it on the map. I think equally as much, if not more so, was the success of the Session Mob, because it was so uniquely Irish, so uniquely OTT, those crazy matches with lads from the flats and stuff, that it was like, that's, for me, that's the fighter most synonymous with the brand. That's, if I close my eyes and think OTT, I think Session Mob. And she has given us so many fantastic moments over the years. Brilliant, brilliant fights, brilliant memories. I like, ultimately, when an OTT Hall of Fame comes around, She's first round. End of story. Like
Has to be.
there's no doubt in my mind. Just straight in, no questions. It is absolutely a Hall of Fame career from her. What she has done over the years. Like you think about again, even some of the hardcore matches, the Kings of the North slamming her to steel cages. Like what she has put into the business uh, is way above and beyond what was ever needed, and that was all for our benefit as the fans. I love her to bits. She can do no wrong in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. She's incredible, especially her character. Her characters. Um, as you said, they're kind of represents an Irish person. But when one of your reactions, some of your reactions are quite crazy sometimes, and one of your reactions was Debbie Keitel, Debbie Keitel versus Sasha Martina OTT Women's Championship in their last match, and she returned back with Lemu, and your reaction, when you went mad at that moment. How did that feel when you saw that moment, when you saw that happening?
It's just electric. It captures an energy. Like I said, it's still very real to me, as that infamous meme goes. I say I can get into character. It's very real. It's not that much of a stretch for me to get into character. Like I said, I'm still that 7-year-old kid who loves pro wrestling. I can get swept up in it, and that's the magic of pro wrestling, where you do get swept up in the emotion of it, and that's something that Session Mock can do every single time. Uh, I, I love her. I love what she does. She has given those magical moments to so many of the fans over the years, and it's just that incredible energy. And you do that in the stadium, 2,200 people singing and dancing and chanting along. It's phenomenal.
And what's been your favorite Session Moth match to call?
Oh, that's a tough one. Favorite of all. It's funny. It wouldn't be one of the more recent kind of incredible matches where like a work rate match where she's doing loads of great moves, and it probably goes back to the crazy character stuff in the Tivoli days. Like there's a match there where she's dressed up as the Virgin Mary, which is phenomenal. There's early matches with Nixon Newell as well were phenomenal. The Session Friends, the atmosphere around those are ones that were really special to be around for me, and they're the ones that stick out in my mind.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like the more popular matches. It was more like the edgy Tivoli Day
Yeah,
matches.
yeah, that's what speaks to me. That's what lives more in my heart. Again, this goes back to the thing of I I like the stories. I can take or leave a Canadian destroyer. Get me invested, get my heart invested, and that's where you'll win me over. And the main event last night up in Drogheda as Callum Black took on Jay the Kingslayer. I was fully invested in that start to finish because they're two guys who've been around the block. You kind of for a long time we're seen as the next big thing, but their generation has come, their time has come. They are the number ones now. And to see those two guys go and lay it all on the line in Callum Black's hometown, good lord, hell of a fight! Like really, really phenomenal stuff from both guys. And I was locked in, hook, line, and sinker for every single minute of that match.
Yeah, Colin Black, and so's Jay, but Colin Black's amazing. The kind of hard hitting style that he has. I don't think anything can really top that because there is a lot of big guys in the ring. I'm not really a big fan of watching big wrestling, but Colin Black, he's one of he is a bigger guy, and the kind of hard hitting style is just incredible. I think he's
Freakishly
one of the
strong.
best.
Yeah, and dangerous. And I tell you, the hunger that's in that man is an uncommon hunger. He was around. He was making serious waves on those kind of as those contender shows were coming up and really kind of starting to land. He was making waves. He was kind of the next big thing. And then he went away. And he went away for a good few years. And it was touch and go. Would he ever come back? And the fact that he has come back is testament to just how strong that fire is within him. I tell you one thing, I'm glad I don't have to fight him because that fire is real. He will run through a brick wall to get to where he needs to be. And as Jamie Coleman said on commentary last night, the idea of a future that contains Callum Black as OTT World Heavyweight Champion, there's no one going to argue with you about that. It's not a lot of people would say it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in the future he's going to be incredible. Him as OTT champion would be absolutely amazing. And for For some of the matches that you've called, what's been your most memorable call or most memorable, um, that, like what moment, like one moment where you freaked out? What's been your most memorable one or most famous one?
Uh, it's got to be the Devlin Walter stuff. Um, that was real lightning in a bottle. You know, the whole thing with indie wrestling is you can't do long-term storytelling because there's too many variables. You don't have guys under contract, and whatever way the cards fell over that stretch of a couple of years of the import killer run of Jordan Devlin into those Walter matches, the heartbreak of the loss around them, that when Devlin finally emerged victorious, uh, that was as real as it gets for me. And there was very much a feeling of national pride in it because, you know, at that time, you know, the Meltzers of the world are talking about the matches, they're talking about the production values, they're talking about commentary, which is obviously very flattering. But it felt like we were making world class content. We, you know, the video packages from Sean Ryan particularly, it felt like we were making world class content. And the idea that a little upstart company from Dublin that started off to 200 people in the Tivoli could now be making, you know, what was arguably feud of the year that year, match of the year that year, it felt incredible. I felt proud that an Irish company was doing it, and also that we were doing it with grassroots talent. That, you know, it's an Irish guy doing the promo videos. It's, you know, two Irish guys on commentary. It's an Irish guy as the champ in the center of the ring. Okay, we've got the big bad invading foreigner and Walter as the heel, but it's all coming from the mind of Cabray, and that's I think back on calling that match that night. Very few things can touch that.
Yeah, I agree. Like I've watched some of their matches and it's amazing. And being able to see Finn Balor come back to OTT with the WWE Tag Team titles, what was that like?
You know, it's you want to call it a full circle moment, but, you know, obviously Fergal or JD Balor had never been with us in OTT to begin with. If you like, he'd already gone at that stage. But for me, on a personal level, to see my pal Fergal, who I know since he was a 20-year-old kid, who, like I said, beat the Jesus out of me in a ring in Bray, and we stayed in touch quite a bit over the years after I'd finished training. We'd see each other fairly regularly, and he'd always ask me, you know, how's the acting going? Oh, well, I'm doing this thing here, I'm touring there, I'm doing this film here. And I'd say, and how's the wrestling? Oh, I'm going for another tour in Japan or whatever else. And so to have the moment of him coming to an OTT ring, to get the chance to call a match of the guy who trained me, felt glorious. You know, it really did. It was magic, and I know it meant a lot to the boys. It meant a lot to a lot of people that Maxer and Matthew Bullet Smith got their chance to shine. That WWE were happy to sign off on them as going, yeah, these guys are of a quality that we are more than willing to put them in a ring with our champs. I mean, again, only for the fact that it's happened, people kind of forget how impossible a thing that was to happen, how unthinkable a thing that was. You know, if you think in the last 40 years of WWE, how many times a reigning champ has fought for a rival promotion. Like, you're talking about counting that in the fingers of one hand. Like, it's unspeakably rare. And OTT was deemed good enough. Bullet Smith and Maxer were deemed good enough. The OTT crowd, the OTT production values were deemed worthy of that night. That's a big vote of confidence that you're doing something right, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially the WWE would allow that. You know, you don't normally see WWE allowing their champions, never allowing their wrestlers, never mind their champions in these shows.
Yeah, because you're talking about, like, again, this is a multi-billion-dollar international company who has invested literally millions of dollars in these two fighters. Like, so all it takes is to roll an ankle. All it takes is, like, because here's the thing: if our ring crew isn't up to scratch and the ring isn't put together properly, and Balor rolls an ankle and gets out for 6 weeks or 6 months, that's millions and millions of dollars in merch, in pay-per-views, in subscriptions, out the window. And that's, you're talking about, you know, if you want to say it this way, like the lowest person on the rung in terms of the hierarchy of OTT, oh, I'm just somebody who puts the ring together. It's like, side note, the people who put the ring together are incredibly important. Don't think of them as nothing, right? Because that's the ones that keep us all safe in there. But like, that's a chain is only like the weak link in the chain is what we talk about. Okay, so OTT from down to the smallest link in that chain was deemed to be of a world standard that Triple H was happy to say, I will send my champs that I've invested millions of dollars in over there because I know they will be treated safely and with respect. That, like, you can't say fairer than that. What more could you want?
Yeah, exactly. Um, and have that kind of bragging right, from wrestling in front of maybe only 100 people in the Tivoli days to then main
Yeah.
evented shows and being able to tour even to Milan and places like that. Like it was originally built to be a small Irish company. I think that's quite a good thing. I'm going to get some other comments here. So
Great.
Scenic Spots asks who were the best Irish wrestlers in the 80s.
I don't know that there were many Irish knocking around in the 80s. I mean, I think it in terms of the Irish guys coming along, there were really very few. I mean, obviously, there's like you're talking Fit Finlay, really, but is he even as early as the 80s, or does he come into the 90s? Maybe. My history on that's not as great.
He was in. Most people probably would have heard of him in the 80s, but he was wrestling in World of Sport and stuff as well.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, I think he was in the 80s, but maybe not as well known at the time.
yeah. So they were really very few and far between. It is very new. I mean, I like in terms of this current crop of Irish wrestlers, if you like, the Sheamuses, the Beckys, the Finn Balor's, the JD McDonoughs, the Lyras, that has all come from that post 2002 was when the school opened in Bray, and kind of it was the thing that came from that with Irish Whip and NWA, which then became Fight Factory. That in those early days, and that rivalry between those two stables, because that was a real rivalry for a long time, kind of stupidly. But that thing, and again, the wrestling channel was on the satellite TV, and people were watching stuff. And there was a buzz around Irish wrestling there, but it feels like it is from that time that this crop of people came through, and the kind of before that, bits and pieces here and there, but no real scene here before that. There weren't indie shows running before that.
Yeah. And Bring Back Paddy asks, "Who's the form? What's the formula to putting a memorable match together?"
Well, Jesus, if I knew that, I'd be a millionaire. What do I think? Well, I'll tell you. Here's a little peek behind the curtain, maybe, if we like. The one message that Cabaret keeps hammering home in every pre-show meeting these last few months is that it's not really about the wrestling. Because the issue is, okay, 3 matches into a 7-match card, we've seen a drop kick, we've seen a clothesline, we've seen an Irish, like, okay, cool, like, great. I mean, these are moves and whatever else we're gonna, okay, and a 450 from the top rope is impressive or whatever else, but make us care. Like make us invest in kind of who you are, whether that whether you feel like it's kind of putting forward a character or telling us a storyline or just making us invest emotionally in it. That's what it's all about. Someone was asking me yesterday, like, what's a tough match to call? And I go, kind of cold matches that have just been thrown together. Sometimes, if there's been an injury or a travel delay or something, and there's a match where there isn't a feud there isn't an angle. I find those harder to call because it's harder to care about them. Now, I do my job and I sell the commentary, and it is what it is. But really, what people are looking for, what makes things memorable, is when they care. It's the storyline and the angle more so than the move. I mean, okay, what's the most iconic moment in the history of pro wrestling? Is it Hogan slamming Andre? Okay, that's a body slam. Like, this is not a 450 through a burning table. It's not a destroyer. It's not a flip. And again, it's that thing that Taker says. He goes, I can get as big a pop from raising my fist above my head as someone can from doing, a crazy super flip to the outside. And my thing with the boys is, and the girls, I have to say, I want them all to make as much money as possible for as long as possible, taking as few bumps as possible. I want them to have long, happy, well-paying careers. And so, yeah, in terms of making stuff memorable, I think it's about caring emotionally about what's going on. That they're the ones that I buy into. They're the ones that I care about. Where it feels real to them. That's when it feels real to me. And I tell you, this is going to sound like I'm pushing it. Last night in Drogheda felt ridiculously real to me. That crowd was white hot. Callum Black's hometown, but Jay's the Kingslayer and the champ. When that comes out on VOD, snap it up. It was an incredible fight.
And Darmite said asks, you always seem really hyper when you're at the shows. Do you have any pre-show rituals?
Yes, I do. A pint of Monster, which is why I seem so hyper. Yeah, I think if Monster knew how much the world of Irish wrestling runs on their products, we could get some kind of sponsorship deal. Do I have any pre-show rituals? What I will do is, as I say, I don't like to try and script anything really. That opening speech that I'll give, the formula is there. People like me to get to the time is now, the place is here, all that stuff. So I'll kind of run through some of that. I'll work about what I'm doing. That opening speech again, it's not about me getting out there and getting my moment to shine in the spotlight. I don't care about that. The function of my opening speech to the crowd is to help train the audience, because sure, there's a cohort of the fans that are hardcore fans. They're following all of us. They're signed up to the VOD. They're checking out all the videos on the socials and whatever else. But also, there's new people coming all the time who don't know the storylines, don't know what else, and also maybe have never been to a pro wrestling show before. And so they think they're at a theater show and you've got to sit down and be quiet and polite. I go, no. I need to train them in that opener that we want you to cheer. We want you to shout. We want you to get up and be in full voice, because that's the energy that the guys and girls in the ring are fueled by. So when I'm out there hyping up the show, I'm not telling people what the card is. They know what the card is. That's why they bought the ticket. It's to say, this bad guy's going to come, boo, to take on your hero, the good guy. Hey, and we just teach them that kind of boo-yay stuff and get them in the habit of doing it. I mean, this is what TV shows all around the world. Any chat show, any talk show like that has a stand-up comedian come out and do 20, 25 minutes before you tape the show to get the audience hyped up. It happens on all the American late night talk shows. It happens here for the late, any show like that. It's a vital part of getting the audience up there, and that's kind of my function on the day. It's to whip the crowd up and get them ready. But in terms of rituals, not particularly. I don't get particularly nervous. As I said, I'm doing this nearly 30 years, so it's kind of comfort zone for me. Just a solid pint of Monster before you start, and that does just about everything you need.
And Wrestling Insider says OTT has some massive shows. Their shows, their small shows are magic too. Sharp Street even. Yeah, their crowd are wild.
They certainly can be. We're at Sheriff Street this weekend coming, I think, and there are some tickets still available. So those of you in the Dublin area, please do head down and check it out. And it's funny that for those smaller shows, which kind of are, I don't know what you would call them. Do you call them house shows? Do you call them non-canon? It can be a fantastic opportunity for newer guys to get a look in, kind of work with some more experienced guys. It can be a chance to see guys coming in and breaking into the card, the young guys and girls in kind of some of their earliest matches, which is a fantastic opportunity, to be there to say, I saw them when, I saw their first match, I saw their debut. Because again, if you think about the percentage of our fighters who have gone on to make serious waves internationally, and I don't just mean in WWE, but obviously that's kind of the pinnacle, but with Myla Grace signing for TNA, the Session Mock getting into Ring of Honor, a lot of the guys from us heading over and doing tours in Japan, like LJ Cleary and things like that. Like the next big global superstar is very likely to be fighting in Sheriff Street next weekend, and you can be there to cheer them on at the earliest stage and get an autograph for free rather than paying $40 for it in a few years' time.
Exactly, it's a great way to think of it. But yeah, I went to one of the Sheriff Street shows, and it was wild. The way some of the kids were booing the wrestlers. That's what you want, but it was crazy.
Yeah, I missed that last Sheriff Street show, but from what I've heard, it was exuberant, I think is the word you'd use for it.
And Scenic Spots asks, what's it like when one of the original TT guys get a call up to Japan or America?
It's fantastic. It really is fantastic. The only thing I could liken it to, as I said, I've been lucky enough in my career from the acting end of things. I've shared screens with Oscar winners, Tony winners, like I said, Nobel Prize winners, and Irish fighters, Irish performers are every bit as good as anybody else on the planet, and we hold our own. We punch above our weight, and so the way I see it, it's not. I don't even view it that they've kind of graduated to the next level. I think they were always on that level, but just maybe in a smaller shop window. And what I like to think of it as, this is them getting their chance to be in that bigger shop window and show the world exactly who they are and what they're capable of. I'm delighted for the likes of an LJ Cleary, who's just tearing it up in Japan. Obviously, an unfortunate injury now. He'll be out to the end of the year. But
yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah, but he's shown the world what he's capable of. And obviously as well, there's a reality to what the scene here in Ireland is. we've whatever 5.5-6 million people. We're the size of Manchester. If you want to progress, there's only so many shows you can do on the island of Ireland in any one month, And if you want to get the reps in, if you want to get out in front of audiences, both for your own training and development, but also to get your name out to those audiences, doing it exclusively on the island of Ireland is limiting, is the word I would use for it. And so getting out to work those UK shows, the increasing relationships we now have across mainland Europe between France and Italy and Spain, I think is fantastic for that kind of cross-pollination of talent. I mean, looking at the locker room yesterday, I don't know, was there 5 or 6 different languages being spoken? It was incredible. Really diverse locker rooms, everyone getting on incredibly well. It's a lovely vibe backstage at the moment. And I think that's a huge benefit. So I love seeing people out there get those additional reps in, because it makes them better fighters. You see when LJ came back from Japan, he's in the shape of his life. He's got these reps under his belt. The confidence is high. And again, when we had Lyra home as well, these are phenomenal moments. And so, yeah, it's a huge sense of pride. And again, but I feel the pride about it, not, they've now progressed better than OTT to the world standard. I think they're at the world standard when they're here at OTT. They just get the chance to shine on a bigger stage. And I'm delighted for any of our gang that gets to go and make waves internationally, whether that's Debbie in Japan, Mila in America, whatever it is. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. And Wrestling Insider asks, who are the up-and-coming talent to look out for?
I don't think it comes as any great surprise that I'm a big fan of Limo. Again, a guy who's making waves in the States. He's back over for another American tour in a couple of weeks' time. Luke Frel and Keaton Noonan kind of at each other's throats at the moment, because I think they feel that position that the Callum Blacks and Jay would have been in a few years ago, that they're vying for that top spot now, kind of on the undercard of who's the next big thing, who's the next hot prospect. And I think you'd be hard pressed to choose between Noonan and Frel. They're both serious fighters. But yeah, so I'm looking at those three in particular, because I do think the likes of the Jay and the Callum Blacks have progressed on. I think they've kind of graduated on. So in terms of hot prospects, man, if I was at a casino and had a chance to put money on Limo, I'd be remortgaging the house. He's got a big John Cena head on him and a body he couldn't you're going to create a wrestler mode on SmackDown versus Raw or whatever. And I said he's already making those waves in the States. And I think, you look at the likes of LJ Cleary, that feels like it's only a matter of time, So it's an exciting time to be around. But yeah, I think Limo, Frehel, Noonan, there's some interesting guys there.
Absolutely, and the sky's only the limit when for OTT. Going to other places, and you are getting trained very well, especially in Ireland, and also in Northern Ireland. The training is obviously second to none. But TZS videos asks, how do you get the fans invested with non-verbal communication? What non-verbal communication works best?
Wow. Well, I mean, I'm not the expert on that. I'm literally Mr. Verbal. I'm the commentary guy. I'm only doing the talking. So I'm not an expert on that. I'll tell you what though. I was talking to Big Damo about this the other day. His capacity to listen to an audience and feel where they are is second to none. I think I'm so grateful that we have Damo as champ in OTT at the moment. Not just because he's an exceptional fighter, not just because yesterday saw his 14th successful title defense in
Seems like we've lost him here again. Let's wait for him to come back here.
I'm back.
Yep, you're back.
Okay, yeah. So, like I said, 14 successful title defenses in just over a year. That's a fighting champ. But he is the epitome of a locker room leader. And it is so valuable to have someone like that around because, we've lost the Jordan Devlins. We've lost the Lyras, that are a really good influence on younger talent coming through. So to have someone of the caliber of Damo there is second to none. But his listening, his understanding of the crowd and how the crowd works and how you would structure a match to bring a crowd up he is fantastic. Even yesterday, listening to him talk about a match where they had brought the crowd right the way up and they had planned a sequence to go into, but it was going to be like a not a wrestle, like a submission hold or something that was going to bring them back down to bring them back up again. They go, well, if we have them up, don't bring them down to bring them back up again. We have them up, push on from where we are. But it takes a seasoned vet, a solid pro with 2 decades in his arse pocket to be able to know and have the confidence that call an audible in the ring, we're not going into that section we had planned. We go on to this bit here because that's what the audience needs. And the genius of that is a lesser wrestler will go, but I planned to do my spot. I wanted to get my big move in. You go, man, it's not about you and your big move. It's not about you. It's about the fans. And if what the fans need is for us to cut and move to that next section, then that's what we're going to do. Again, you need someone as talented and as brilliant as Damo there to do it. But mercifully, we have him, and he will do that. And it's so useful for us as a company generally.
Yeah, exactly. You need someone like that. TZS Videos asks, have you seen WWE Unreal? An OTT version would be class.
Yeah, I did. I watched it all, and I really enjoyed it. I know an awful lot of people were put out by it, that they felt that it was too much of a peek behind the curtain.
I disagree.
I disagree too. I didn't personally feel that at all. I mean, in many respects, that genie's out of the bottle. And look, no one fights to kind of protect kayfabe more than I do. I kind of toe the party line an awful lot. And I'm slow to talk about stuff kind of behind the scenes. And as I said, I always try and call it as much of a shoot as I possibly can. However, I thought that was really useful stuff. Like, we know that in the Marvel movies, Thor isn't Thor, Batista isn't Drax, like we know what these things are. We've been smartened up to it. And so I think it's about having a bit of respect for the audience. Yes, an OTT version of that would be incredible. And spoiler alert, we have had a documentary crew behind the scenes for the last number of months. And I think from talking to the director of that, it may well be coming to fruition in the relatively near future. So you might well just get your wish and have a little peek behind the scenes of OTT.
And Baga asks, what do you think of Rob Gould's reign as self-imposed OTT champion? Is it true that Big Damo fears him?
I drove Damo to his hotel last night. Damo was in tears. The fear is very real for Damo. He looks like a big monster. He's gentle, and he is terrified because he knows Rob Gould has got his sights on him, and I don't know if he's going to have the answers. I hope those two don't fight each other in a dark alley anytime soon because sparks could fly.
And as we're coming to the end of the podcast, I want to thank you very much for coming on. But I've got 2 more questions for you. So, with you having so much experience in OTT and stuff like that, and nearly being there for over a decade, what is next for Aonghus McAnally and OTT wrestling?
Well, for OTT, I hope it just continues going from strength to strength. I'm fortunate that I can balance it against the acting work as well. So I was on the set of a new Netflix series on Friday, and then I was up in Drogheda on Saturday doing OTT, and then the week after next I'm shooting a new thing for the BBC. So it's always constantly ticking over for me, but mercifully I've been able to balance it out that I can juggle both at the same time. There's been a couple of nights for big stadium shows where I've been on stage in the Abbey across the city, and so we'll have a situation where as soon as the show finishes, I'll run off stage, tear off the costume, get in a taxi straight to say run on and kind of commentate on the last match and a half. But I always try and make it wherever possible. I've been lucky that I've been able to structure it for the most part. But yeah, what's happening for me is, look, we've had a phenomenal first decade, really. For me, I hope there's another decade to come of exceptional nights out with OTT fans. I want to be there to share the magic with them all. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm having a ball. I want to stay exactly where I am.
Yep, and hopefully we'll see you there. And I wish and you've done so well, with being the voice of OTT wrestling. I wish you all the best for your future career. I've got one last question for you. So, for new commentators coming in, what advice would you give them?
What I would say is learn as much as you can, study as much as you can, listen back to people, work out what it is about the commentators you like, and try and steal from the best. The other thing is the nature of how it works. For most part, you're going to be part of a 2-man booth, and that'll be a play-by-play and a color. That should not be split 50-50. It has to be split 60-40, 70-30 maybe in favor of the play-by-play guy. The color commentary should be popping in with momentary gold nuggets every so often. The other thing is, don't try and get yourself over. It is not about you. It's about the guys and girls in the ring. That's the only thing that matters. So what you need to do is be there to respond organically for the big moments, but also have the good sense to shut the hell up at times. Let the crowd roar tell the story. Let the impact of the huge move as it lands in the ring tell the story. You don't have to be talking for 100% of the time. In fact, if you do, you'll kill it. Know when to shut up. I think that's a really interesting, even as an exercise. Find one of your favorite matches and run a stopwatch on it. Not for when the lads are talking, but when the commentators aren't. How much silence is left? And by silence, obviously, I mean the crowd atmosphere is still there, the chants are still there, the sound of the hits is still there. But see how much silence the commentators leave, because good commentators know when to shut the hell up. That's the best advice I can give someone. But it's not about you. It's about the talent in the ring. If you're going in there with an ego going, I'm going to be a big star, I'm going to get myself over, not only will you not get there, but the product will suffer for it. It's got to be about shining a spotlight on the stars in the ring. That's the only way to do it.
Yep. And again, thanks so much for coming on. And for anyone who wants to check out Angus's commentary, his great commentary, or any of the OTT matches, head to OTTOnDemand.com. That's where you get to see all the OTT matches, and I really recommend doing that. Angus, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on. It's been an awesome interview.
My pleasure, man. Really great to chat to you. Really appreciate you making the time to have me on.
Great. Thank you. Bye. So that was an amazing interview with Aonghus McAnally. We'll be off soon, and I'll just talk about what's coming up next. So, as for the next NWF Forward on our collaborative channel, the Rockstar Poetry Essay will be coming on the next NWF Forward to talk about some of his upcoming matches. And for the next, and that'll be live on Thursday, October 16th. And for the next Kayfabe with Keaton, I have coming on none other than Nando Libre. This is one of the best up-and-coming wrestlers in NIPW. He was seen in the main event of Belfast Brawl, where he nearly actually won the title. So we'll get to speak to Nando about that match and see what's going for him in the future and see what matches he has coming up, especially his recent match against Jordan Nelson, where we near saw him be unmasked. So it'll be great to hear from Nando Libre. And that's on Sunday, the 19th of October at 7 p.m. UK time. So thanks very much for tuning in, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one for the next NWF Forward and the next Kayfabe with Keaton. Bye for now.